It's Monday. It's August 28th, 2023. I'm sitting here this morning. I put up on my Facebook page, just making notes for myself to keep track. Um, they had up the state of education. Pew Research put something out. It was on CBS. I snapped a photo of it. I recorded it in my timeline and sequencing of events, um, keeping track of what's going on in New York City, um, for national security purposes, to protect myself from the humans and whatever they've been doing. Um, Today, they say, is the anniversary of the March on Washington. And I see there's President Biden at the table in the White House, and he's surrounded by some other, like some shipment of humans from somewhere far, far away. Um, and I'm not sure where. Um, but I see that they're sitting there and they're saying that that's like democratic. And I'm thinking back, trying to rely on my high school education and the college education that I went through. Now, in my introduction to, like, there's these two, we live in a democratic republic, so they say, or so the television's been saying, and they never really defined what it meant. I was writing a text message to my son and I asked how he's doing. Um, and I, for the first time, shared with my children. I'm like, I went away to college my first year, but I was in a private dormitory. Private. And then there was the party quad, which I was far away from. Spent a lot of time in my dormitory studying, hence my grades are whatever they were. But there was not a whole lot of community and socializing. Um, I wouldn't, like, even back then, I didn't know what was going on or how it was going on. And I didn't know anybody in that section of the campus. Um, so, well, I knew Gary, but whatever. Um, so that was interesting. I spent time off campus in Bayville. Labreezy took me there, I think once or twice. Um, but that was it at the CW post for the Greenvale, whatever. Um, so I am in this, and I'm realizing at St. John's Prep, just so I can update. I grew up on 3 Glen Way, and I went to a place called St. John's. And then I see Godspeed. There's this man, and he was like the best space. Like, he's like one of the top. There were 7 that they gave, like, the public a child's book on, the public that doesn't really know much of anything, out in, like, the real world in New York. Um, well, this democratic republic is, and then they have this movie Air Force One, and their opening scene with Harrison Ford shows a very different president meeting, but again, that's like in 22-foot and higher ceilings. Um, so I'm careful. I know where where this colony is, as opposed to what might be far, far and away, and how advanced civilizations might be somewhere else, and whatever stage of evolution we're in. I just went to the food store, and on the radio, I mean, they're having a really hard time with what's showing up in Manhattan, there's this big fight going on in New York, out in the public, like, and it sometimes gets violent. I'm watching it through the television. Um, People showing up saying like Americans first over migrants. What I don't understand, and I had this conversation with Lynn when we were out at Roosevelt Field yesterday, is I'm like, um, what happened? Like, if our colony numbers and ratios were dwindling, why not invite people from colony elsewhere in like the correct gardening material for future here? Why do they purposely seem to be reaching like developing worlds that are not congruent or symbiotic and moving that kind of genetic product into this area? Why aren't they finding the same gardening material for the children and their future? I mean, this just, it's very disturbing. It's very disruptive. It's very unattractive. And like, I don't know. It's not a good look. The fighting's not a good look. The choices are not a good look. The conversations don't feel or sound right. Even having to talk to myself in like the room just to have my voice put on record. So this way, if like somebody from the United States and the federal side comes looking and wants to know I've been recording what they've been up to and what's arrived, and not knowing who's responsible, but I'm not all right with it. But again, senior year at St. John's Prep, I'm like the last one. Like, there's like, I'm one of only like maybe two, three girls that looked like their heritage looked like mine, and the rest was something too, like a mixture of like United Nations, something else. I was outnumbered. I knew that. I stayed in my wing of the high school. Um, but they said I had to register to vote. I had to. But they did not tell me what the voting was about. They did not teach me what voting was about. They did not teach me what the parties were about. And then there was no contact from either party thereafter. I had to check a box and hand it to Mr. Flood. That was his name. Just so Noah, his name really was Flood. You can check, it's on my St. John's Prep record. And then like the party never contact. There was no social interactions with the party. There was no, here's what we're doing for your national security. Would you like to join us? Do you want to help campaign with us? You want to, nothing. Just check the box, out the door, and they forgot about me out in the field. Just, well, they do, I don't know what. So I'm watching how they put out Star Trek. But the thing is that I have this important part amongst humanity, with special birthing order, with timing and clocks and symmetrical clocks, not like an irrational clock system, necessarily, although I don't know how the high-level scientists that actually get to go to academy, like, again, I don't know how space cadets would officialize it, but I'm watching H&I for Star Trek. What's interesting is 19th century. I mean, like, I hear all these people on the front face of the news, and I'm thinking, where does critical thinking come in to like the information received in thought experiments? So I'm like, did anybody realize AI is the equivalent of the numbers 1-9 in the 26 letter alphabet? So are they, AI is just the 19th century? Is that what they're saying? Or like the 19th to a centurion? Like, again, I don't know, but I qualify as an AIGH if that's the case. So here we are, at what did Star Trek say? Because going back to the state of education, my public school, it feels like at this point totally failed preparing me for marriage, for children, for success. They did not prepare me for invasion of underdeveloped nations. Um, they did not prepare me for management changes. Um, so this is what I have to go off of as some kind of preparation about introducing technology.
They made a few modifications. All of our preliminary scans indicated the environment was real.
Environments that fool sensors. No safety protocols. How many bodies?
43. Most of them were killed by facsimiles of Alpha Quadrant weapons. Romulan disruptors, Klingon bat'leths.
Starfleet phasers?
I think we'll find they all came from the holotechnology we gave the Hirogen 3 years ago.
They obviously missed the point. We gave them that technology so they could hunt holographic prey, not to get themselves killed.
Try to remain calm.
Holographic prey. So does this qualify as that? Because in that one argument, like in an if-then scenario, which I forget the type of mathematics that they taught that under the structure of the words of the mathematics. I know it was ninth grade. I know it was, he called himself Mr. Guido, not Dr. Guido in St. Dominic's. That was ninth grade math. It was an if-then scenario in some of our, I think maybe it was pre-calculus. I don't really remember. There was a regents involved with it. So I'm going to pause this because it goes from this with that holographic capturing of images into what's going on in the local news. For the first time today, under the seeking asylums, they let me know what the Staten Island borough president looked like. I'd never even heard of him, never saw him. I know that the Queens borough president looks very different, but I don't see him a lot on the television. And then here's on Channel 7, they're celebrating their 60th anniversary with this March on Washington. Now, I mean, like, again, I'm in a city that got hit, the Twin Towers got hit by terrorists. That was the appropriate language to use. And I'm just curious, like, why is this not considered a terrorist action, but yet the Twin Towers falling and that group are considered terrorist? I mean, again, this was 60 years ago, and I see just how much abundance of bodies have accumulated in New York. And I'm just wondering where my colony replacement bodies are for healthy colony, healthy community in like tribunal. I don't know why our numbers have dwindled and why it's so hard to find that safe place to raise a family inside of the borough of Queens on this Long Island.
Today marks 60 years since the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and today that historic event is being commemorated both here in New York and in the nation's capital. It was on August 28, 1963, when an estimated 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s now legendary "I Have a Dream."
Now, this is the President of the United States, and this is what's sitting today marking that anniversary on this date.
Speech. President Biden and Vice President Harris this afternoon met in the Oval Office with King's relatives and organizers of the 1963 gathering here in New York. Mayor Adams today unveiled.
Okay, see, and that's the problem with that image, is they refer to this man as King. Like, it's his last name, it's his Surrey name, or it's his Surname, his Surrey name would be the appropriate term if King Charles III was present. So I'm having this problem in this democratic republic, and with all this influx of newcomers under some other whatever, and with the way they presented that. Now, if I offset that story with what Air Force One put out, like Ed Harris was the rock of the movie screen in 1996, and then in 1997 Harrison Ford came out with Air Force One. So I'm just going to go back to that one holograph for reference of these are the only displayed, like, that they put money into this in order to put it out there in like expectations. This is all I have to go off of.
Ladies and gentlemen, 3 weeks ago, Russian and American special forces apprehended the self-proclaimed leader of Kazakhstan, General Ivan Radik. The forces of Radik were directed towards the suppression of democracy. His nuclear arsenal could have brought the world into a new Cold War. But thanks to the support of one of the world's greatest leaders, Radik is now in prison.
Does that have anything to do with Star Trek and Roddenberry, like Gene Roddenberry? I'm just curious with whatever he's going on at Star Trek and then whatever that leads into, and I haven't been watching it.
Today, we're honoring this brave man. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, the President of the United States of America.
Now, this is just a movie, but the movie does say Air Force One and 1997, and I'm standing in the year 2023. These were my NASA astronauts, my space mechanics, my the greatest, like, aerospace heads that they have out in my section of public knowledge. Only thing I have access to.
Умершие запомнили наше безразличие.
The dead remember our indifference.
Наше молчание.
The dead remember our silence.
I came here tonight to be congratulated. But today, when I visited the Red Cross camps, overwhelmed by the flood of refugees fleeing from the horror of Kazakhstan, I realized I don't deserve to be congratulated. None of us do.
What's he doing?
Let's be clear.
It's not the speech.
The truth is, we acted too late. Only when our own national security was threatened did we act.
So that's where I'm at in this New York real world version. And this is still the flag that flies at the top of the banks, the public library. It's in the New York City parks system. It's a whole bunch of places. It's what I see people wearing on their arm. It's star 1978, star 8378, NICOLE Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.